I have a confession. It's shocking, it's serious, and it may horrify you. But for those of you who know me, it won't be a surprise. I am a lousy housekeeper. I know. But in my defense, there are just so many more fun things to do rather than doing dishes, washing clothes, dusting, vacuuming, scrubbing floors, and the whole nasty business. I mean, bleh. But the problem with ignoring the cleaning and the laundry, well, unfortunately, they have to be dealt with eventually. And inevitably, some unsuspecting person will tell me they're coming over, or the maintenance people will be due in, and I will frantically dash around like a complete madwoman trying to make the apartment look like Martha Stewart, and not my messy old self actually lives there. It's been a persistent problem in my life. At one point, I got so angry at myself for this ridiculous, never-ending, self-inflicted stress that I talked to my therapist about it. Wise woman that she is, she told me, in discipline, there is freedom. In discipline, there is freedom. Huh. If I get my stuff done on the regular rather than ignoring it, I wouldn't always be making myself crazy. When someone asks to come over, there's no maniacal cleaning. Maybe I'll fluff some pillows on the couch. But that's it. The maintenance people come in, do their thing, they leave. No nonsense, no stress, no mess. I live in the clean environment I deserve. Life would work. Peace would reign. Common sense for the lazy woman. In discipline, there is freedom. Freedom to just be. Freedom to live as I like. Freedom from self-imposed stress. Freedom. Doesn't that work for a lot of things in our lives? Keep your act somewhat together, and it makes things easier. But how about on a really large scale? Like, I don't know, governing? Let's think about that. Tuesday is Independence Day, the birth of the United States and the celebration of a nation whose freedom was not yet won. We declared, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Great ideas, but once you get them, how can you preserve them? How do you make sure your citizens can pursue their own life, liberty, and happiness? In discipline, there is freedom. You need laws, you need guardrails in order to keep the country, to keep order in the country. You need a constitution, a form of government with a clear understanding of its purpose, freedom for its citizens. And there lies the rub. After kicking some British butt, we were on our own. We needed to figure out how to govern. At first, we had the Articles of Confederation. The general consensus among the population at that time, they really weren't working for us. And the country needed something else. So off to Philly the state delegates went, ready to design a new government with a new constitution. Once done, the intent of the document was clear. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. What was different about the U.S. Constitution right from the start was that it put the power in the hands of the people. Now, certainly, there were many folks kept from that power: blacks, Native Americans, women, the poor. But at its heart, the Constitution was a radical rethinking of what should constitute good governance in the world. No kings, no emperors, no czars, no dictators. Power was no longer in the hands of one man. The people would have control. At least that was the idea. It's needed a few tweaks throughout the years, from the first 10 amendments, which was the Bill of Rights, which established the rights of Americans and hence the limits of government, to the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments, called the Reconstruction Amendments, which were created to address some of the wrongs of slavery, to the 19th Amendment, which granted suffrage to women, and to the latest, the 27th Amendment, proposed in 1789, but not ratified until 1992, which held that any pay raise voted by Congress for themselves would not go into effect until after the election of the next Congress. The Congress is a work in progress, or the Congress is a work in progress, but the Constitution is a work in progress, as it should be. It's a flawed document for sure, needing at least one more amendment, the Equal Rights Amendment, thank you very much, but it is remarkable in its strength and flexibility in weathering the head-spinning changes in the 2 centuries of its existence. It's been the discipline and boundaries of that Constitution that have given us our freedom. But the proof of the pudding is in the tasting, and when it comes to the Constitution, the proof is in the interpretation. The Constitution is a flexible document, but at the same time, it was written by a bunch of white guys who have been dead for 200 years and wouldn't recognize the society we now live in. Not all originalist interpretations are valid for today's society. As an example, in overturning Roe v. Wade, the majority of the court went back to the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868 and argued that, and this is quote, "the most important historical fact is how the state regulated abortion when the 14th Amendment was adopted." Okay, women didn't even have a vote. Insisting that, another quote, "post-ratification adoption or acceptance of laws that are inconsistent with the original meaning of the constitutional text obviously cannot overcome or alter that text." Okay, contrast that with the interpretation of the Second Amendment, which applies to a well-regulated militia, and that has somehow come to allow pretty much anyone to own a gun or an assault rifle. Originalist interpretation for controlling reproductive freedom, expensive interpretation for guns. Curious, isn't it? Interpretation of the Constitution has always reflected the ebb and flow of the times we live in, and sometimes the religious or political bent of the justices ruling on it. On January 16, 1919, Congress ratified the 18th Amendment, prohibiting the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors. 14 years later, in 1933, Congress ratified the 21st Amendment, repealing the entirety of the 18th Amendment, for which many of us are eternally grateful. Times change, and the Constitution must adapt to those changes. But change frightens some people, and that fear makes them desperate to cling onto the way it used to be, or fantasize about a past that never really existed. Many of the issues that are front of mind these days revolve around our interpretation of the First Amendment. The First Amendment reads, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." Let's pay attention to the first part of that amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. That bit is known as the Establishment Clause. Prior to independence, many of the colonies had their own state religions. After independence, it was pretty much agreed that a federal religion would be a very bad idea. In fact, Thomas Jefferson, in his 1802 letter to the Danbury Baptists, claimed that the Establishment Clause built a wall of separation between church and state, in case you ever wanted to know where that phrase came from. Lately, though, that wall has been pretty malleable. In our current culture war, a politicized church has planted its flag on the right and declared that America must return to its godly Christian roots, which of course, thank you Thomas Jefferson, never existed. However, religion being politicized is not a new thing in our country's history either. From the establishment of state religions prior to independence, to the 19th century temperance movement, to Father Coughlin and his anti-Semitic Nazi-leaning acolytes in the 1930s, to the moral majority in the 80s, to today's MAGA and its so-called anti-woke policies, we've seen this movie before. But something feels different today, a little more unsettling. It feels like all of the progress we've made is being yanked out from under us. There are signals from the Supreme Court that civil rights, gay marriage, even birth control are in danger of being curtailed. In discipline, there is freedom. The discipline of the Constitution and the law were enacted to ensure freedom for the citizenry, to protect and improve their lives, to give them the liberty to live freely without fear of interference from the government. So, what happens when personal liberty and the welfare of the citizenry collide? What happens when a portion of the country, longing for a fictional past, decides that their religion and not the Constitution should choose what is best for the citizenry and elect politicians to reflect that desire? What happens when laws are enacted that conflict with the guarantees of the Constitution, infringe upon personal rights, and run contrary to public opinion? What happens when Supreme Court justices decide that stare decisis, the foundational judicial concept that legal precedent should be honored by the courts and judges, is no longer relevant to the cases before them and make decisions based on personal opinion or religious tenets? See the reversal of affirmative action and the enshrining of religious discrimination against gays in just this past week. What happens is that the legal framework of our country, the founding principles on which our government stands, the Constitution and democracy, are both in peril. We need the guardrails, the discipline of the Constitution. If they fail, we suddenly have others deciding what constitutes freedom for each of us. Want to marry the person you love? Well, we might have something to say about that. You're transgender or non-binary? Your existence on the planet offends some people, so you need to stop doing that. Love drag? Want to be fabulous and read stories to kids who love you? Nope, you give children ideas. We're going to call you groomers. Want to have autonomy over your own body? Oh, please. Don't be ridiculous. You're a woman. Your job is to stay home and make babies. You want to teach your students the actual history of the United States? Like all of it? Oh, dear God, no. Remember those all-white textbooks we boomers grew up learning from? Yeah, we're going to go back to those. Wait, you want to walk around being black like just living your life? Well, that's just too damn threatening, so you better watch yourself. You want what kind of books in the school library? Stories about the people we call weirdos? No. We'll decide what's right for our kids to read because my kids are more important than yours. And best of all, we'll decide who gets to win the elections. You can vote if we let you, and only if you vote correctly. But if we don't like the result, we'll figure out a way to change that. And none of us ever want to see a rainbow again. Yeah, that's the kind of world the fearful are dreaming about. Back to the good old days when women were quiet, blacks were threatened for having the wrong skin color, gays were in the closet, everyone had an assigned gender that never changed because trans people didn't exist. There is a real possibility that we as a nation are already in dangerous territory, which could end up in fascism, in tyranny, and it's terrifying. So what can we do? Very first thing, don't be afraid. Fear is the right's currency. It must not be ours. Second, educate yourself. Know the signs of creeping anti-democratic movements. Watch their tactics. Are they showing up at school board meetings to insist that your district ban books? Be there. Object. Vote in every election, no matter how small. Know your local government. If you can, go to council meetings. Understand what the issues are in your community. Local government is where the right wing has been focused for years. We must pay attention. If we allow neo-fascists to win in local elections, that granular level of power will only grow. Next thing you know, as Liz Cheney said, we'll be electing crazies to Congress. Stand up for what you believe. Make noise. Be a pain. A young black man once asked Frederick Douglass what he could do to effectively work for civil rights. Mr. Douglass responded, agitate, agitate, agitate. I can't think of better advice. In discipline, there is freedom. Our Constitution is flawed but brilliant. It was written by politicians who could barely stand, much less trust each other. And yet, through all their suspicion, they agreed on one thing: freedom for the people. Our Constitution, our democracy is worth fighting for. We are Unitarian Universalists. We've been at the forefront of social change for generations. There were Unitarians, John and Abigail Adams, at the founding of the country. There were Unitarian and Universalist abolitionists. Susan B. Anthony was a Unitarian. There were Unitarians, the Sharps, saving people fleeing Nazi tyranny. There were Unitarian Universalists who were freedom riders. There have been UUs at the Women's March, Black Lives Matter, fighting for trans rights, women's rights, gay rights, civil rights. Whenever there is a call for social justice, we respond. We champion human rights. We know the worth of our democracy. We have faith in each other. We see the value of each person, even those who fight against us. We are powerful when we believe in our goal. We make change. We hold hope. We answer the call of history. And God knows if there is anything UUs can do, as Frederick Douglass advised, it's agitate. Agitate, agitate, agitate. Freedom is worth it. Blessed be. Stop it, you're making me cry. All right. Please rise as you are willing and able, or sit up straight and celebrate your magnificence, and join us in singing hymn number 159, This Is My Song.